So I wanted to make a video about how I actually started in special operations as a support personnel and then eventually went to selection to become a tier 1 operator. And the reason why I'm making this video is because so many people have reached out to me either talking about how they were medically disqualified or they failed selection the first time, or they think that their path is over. Because I've been medically disqualified multiple times. I was told no more times than I can count. Yet perseverance led to me to a life far beyond that I ever knew existed. And this is my story. When I was 10 years old, I saw the movie Green Berets with John Wayne. And from now on, that's exactly what I knew I wanted to be. I graduated high school in 2003. And in 2004, I was in college on a soccer scholarship. At approximately 3:30 in the morning on the 4th of December 2004, I was hit head on by a drunk driver going the wrong way down I-5. And he hit me on the south side of Seattle. And I still have no memory of this car accident. And we collided at a combined speed of 140 miles an hour. And apparently, I must have turned the car at the last second because we went headlight to headlight, which then swung around and put majority of the force of the collision into my left side of the vehicle. Unfortunately, the left side of my body was pretty much crushed. I suffered extensive injuries, including 29 stitches and 29 staples, and almost a severed arm, and with my elbow bone cut completely in half, and multiple contusions all over the left side of my body that are honestly visible even 20 years later. But the most severe injuries were internal. I had a ruptured spleen, which resulted in a splenectomy, and worst of all, I suffered a brain hemorrhage that caused massive brain trauma and subsequent brain damage. We could instantly tell that I was already having issues cognitively. I was examined by multiple psychologists and they assessed that I had regressed to at least a second grade math level. I had severe memory problems and I could not focus. I would forget entire conversations just minutes after they happened. And I struggled with speech for years. And like the idiot that I am, less than 30 days later, I tried to re-attend school so I could resume my scholarship and play soccer again next year. As you can imagine, that didn't go well. I couldn't concentrate through lectures and I could not retain any information. And it was obvious in less than 2 weeks that I did not have the mental capacity to go to school and I dropped out. Physically, I recovered, but mentally, I was beyond frustrated. I felt like there was nothing I could do. I didn't even know if my cognitive abilities would even ever return, and there was nothing I could do to speed up the process. My life felt shattered. Every identity and every plan that I had was gone. I couldn't finish college, I couldn't play soccer anymore, and I couldn't commission as an officer and attend SFAS and become an 18 Alpha one day. That's when I decided I needed a drastic change in my life and I just needed to get out of there and start my life and career somehow. So I went to an Army recruiter about 6 months after my car accident and tried to enlist in the 18 X-ray program. After they reviewed my medical records, they found out that I was medically disqualified because of my splenectomy, because not having a spleen disqualified me just from SF. They showed me a list of things that medically disqualified you from Airborne, Ranger, and SF, and one of the only few ones that disqualified you just from SF was the absence of a spleen. So naturally, I asked about a waiver, and he told me that no MEPS doctor was going to give me a waiver. But then that's when he mentioned another back route, and I asked him what back route was that. He said I could go get my language first, go into group as a support person, become a SOD A, and then get my waiver from within group. So this became my new plan and I committed to this path immediately. So after basic training, I attended DLI, or the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California. For an entire year, I went to school every single day for Persian Farsi. And luckily, despite all my cognitive setbacks, I was able to pass my Persian Farsi course in 1 year with no rollbacks. But while I was at DLI, I started the process of wanting to go into 5th group, where I submitted my airborne packet. On my final day of clearing DLI, I went to the medical facility to retrieve my medical records. When the doctor there handed me my medical records, she also informed me that my airborne packet had come back and I was disqualified. She had told me that because I had a brain hemorrhage that it disqualifies me from airborne. Luckily, this was in 2006 and medical records were not fully digital, but she also handed me the failed airborne packet on top of my medical records. That's when I walked outside the clinic, saw a trash can, slightly tilted my wrist, and watched my failed airborne packet slide right into the trash can. For the next phase of my training, I reported to Fort San Angelo, Texas. It is at this base where I applied for my airborne packet again. And when I was filling out the forms, I got to the section that asked me if I'd ever filled out an airborne packet before, and I said no. And then I got to the section asking if I'd ever have any TBIs or any sort of head injury, and I said no. 2 weeks later, my airborne packet was approved, and my first duty assignment was 5th Group Special Forces at the illustrious and infamous Fort Campbell, Kentucky. After a few more follow-on trainings, including airborne school, I arrived at 5th Group in August of 2007. I was informed immediately that we were going to deploy to Iraq in 2 months. I was immediately assigned to a SOTA team, which stands for Special Operations Team Alpha, which we were told we were going to initially attach to ODA 5323. Luckily, I performed well enough to earn the respect of the team's 18 Zulu, Boomer. I told him about my medical history and the reason why I wasn't able to try out as an 18 X-ray. He decided to raise this issue with the battalion command sergeant major. And when the battalion commander and the battalion CSM visited our team house, they conducted a separate interview just with me. Based on that interview, and of course Boomer's recommendations, and a lot of support from the ODA, the battalion CSM agreed to help me pursue my waiver. He informed me a few weeks later that he had researched the waiver and found out that a general officer in my chain of command needed to sign the waiver, which is obviously above group level because the highest officer in a special forces group is only a colonel. Shortly after submitting, we were informed that the waiver, which needed to be signed not only by the general officer but his deputy, had been signed off by the deputy and was just waiting for the commanding general officer's final signature. And everybody, including myself, believed the approval was imminent. About a 1 week later, I was informed that the general officer rejected it. Unfortunately, that same week, a candidate died in SFAS due to a heart attack and a supposed snake bite. Because I don't have a spleen and the spleen plays a role in my immune system, leadership chose not to accept this additional risk, despite multiple physicians confirming that my immune system wasn't compromised and functioned within normal limits. Honestly, I was devastated. Before our first deployment, we were informed that we would actually be doing 2 deployments back to back. We would go to the certain team houses, we'd be replaced by first group, and then 6 months after we came home for our first deployment, we would redeploy to the exact same team houses for another 8 months. During this 6-month reset, I prepared a second waiver, feeling that some sort of better recommendations would make a difference. Unfortunately, I would learn that they wouldn't. But 2 months before we redeployed again back to Iraq, I attended a course run by the Prometheus group. And what was interesting is all the instructors were either former Delta or ISA operators or support personnel, to include the course director, who was actually a former squadron command sergeant major of ISA. And at the end of this 8-week course, the course director actually on the final day pulled me aside. He told me that he had been hearing about all my issues trying to get into the SFAS and get a waiver. He told me, "You have what we're looking for, and we don't care if you have a spleen or not." And that's when he handed me the information to contact a recruiter for the unit. I completed the ridiculous 40-plus page application and submitted it before deploying again. On my second deployment, Boomer personally requested that I be assigned to his team without the rest of my SOTA team. He told the battalion command either he was going to get just me or he didn't want any of us, which made me the sole attachment to that team. And I absolutely loved it. The team treated me as one of their own. I will always be grateful to that team. They never treated me as support. And in spring of 2010, after a 5-week selection course, I was selected to go to OTC, where I attended a near 1-year-long OTC course. After successfully navigating the entire course and passing my final board, I was accepted as a full unit member and an operator for the unit in the summer of 2011 at the age of 27. And shortly after completing OTC, I was hand-selected to go into the unit's tactical detachment, which was usually only something that reserved for people who've been in the unit for multiple years. After I arrived at the unit, I learned something that gave me real hope. Much like Delta Force, the unit will bring in operators who don't come to selection as an 18 series. And for a lot of different reasons, including rating, it is very common for Delta Force, whenever they can, to send their non-18 series operators to the Q course, because their selection and OTC both trump SFAS and majority of the Q course. So most Delta operators who did not start out as 18 series, they are actually able to go to just the MOS portion of the Q course and then leave with the Green Beret and then be rated as an 18 series. While their OTC did not trump a lot of the things, including SUT, their selection did, where they also had a program where they could attend portions of the Q course and then actually come back as a Green Beret. When I heard this out, I was ecstatic. For the first time, it looked like I was finally going to be able to get around this absence of my spleen issue, because it was my understanding that it just did disqualify me from SFAS. And because our selection trumped SFAS, I thought I was a shoo-in. And then my leadership inquired about sending me. In the end, unfortunately, my medical disqualification still applied. It applied not just to SFAS, but even going to the Q course. For the third time, I was denied my chance to try to achieve the coveted Green Beret. And at that point, I knew it would never happen, all because of my car accident and the fact that I didn't have a spleen anymore. This will always sadden me because I was never able to don the coveted Green Beret, just like my brother did. All because of a medical condition that didn't actually matter and has never affected me in 21 plus years, even while operating at the highest levels in some of the most austere environments. But fortunately, this ended up becoming one of the greatest lessons I would learn in life. As one of my favorite Stoics would say, Epictetus, and he said, make best use of what's in your power and take the rest as it happened. Because there are many things in your life completely outside of your control. And then Epictetus went on to hit the nail right on the head by saying circumstances do not make the man, they only reveal him. And going through this type of hardship not only makes us stronger and appreciate what we have, it also gives us the kind of experiences that make for amazing stories one day. Because the biggest lesson is to never give up on your dreams. Because I know I almost did. Because when one door closes, another may open. And sometimes it leads to somewhere far better than the one that closed. And if I'd given up on my dream and I never would have found this life that was even better than the one that I imagined. Before I wrap this up, if this video added value, take a second to like it, subscribe, or even comment. That helps these conversations reach the people who need it. And if you want to support the channel further, consider becoming a member, because that support helps me to make long-form, in-depth content without watering it down. Either way, I appreciate you being here. And one last thing before I go. I wear barbell apparel because it doesn't distract me. It fits right, holds up, and lets me focus on the work instead of what I'm wearing. And if you're interested, the barbell apparel link and discount code StoicViking25 will be below in the description. Tell them Stoic Viking sent you. I appreciate you guys.